Kale the Quick here for an episode of Game Mechanics Engineering. In this episode, I'll go over what this show is and the kinds of things that will be covered in future episodes. I'll also go over some terms I'll be using somewhat frequently, but first, who am I? Well, I'm Kale the Quick. I play video games, but in the last few years I've been dabbling in programming them on my free time. I have not made anything fit for release yet, but for years I've been studying how games are made. It's changed me a bit. Just how a normal person, critic, and a director could look at a film very differently, my attempted transition from player to designer has left me looking deeper into the workings of the games I play. After I play a game, my mind is filled with little questions. What if this was a little higher? What if that rounded down? All day I think about how these mechanics work together, how they fit, what they represent, and how they could be recombined into new, interesting ways. And that, to me, sounds like engineering. So, what is this show about? Games, obviously. Here we will cover all types of games, not just video games, but also live-action role-playing games, tabletop games, card games, maybe even a sport or two. If science can provide some sort of missing link between the two. We will look into the parts and how they work, how they could work with other mechanics, and how they could be changed or used in different ways. We'll also look at how to represent certain real things in games, or how they are represented already. And that's it. Just here to look a bit deeper into games, between the code and the user interface. Different people sometimes use the same word to mean separate things. So to make sure we're on the same page here, I'm going to go over some of the terms that I've used or I plan on using a lot in future episodes. We'll start with the most obvious one here. What is a game? The simplest definition that I've come across is that a game is just structured play. Makes sense? If you take the act of tossing a ball around and add a few rules like don't let Chet have the ball, then pretty much the same action of throwing the ball is now keep away. In this instance, there's also a ball, but the ball is just a toy. We might say play ball, but ball itself isn't a game. Rather, it's a tool to play a game. This isn't limited to physical toys. Some of the older versions of Minecraft are more toy than a game. Creative mode's lack of depth and resource scarcity takes away the structured goals. And while yes, there are still rules, computers always need rules, it is so much a sandbox that it is, like a real one, a toy. So then, what is a game mechanic? Well, game mechanics are the little parts of a game that make it up. Jumping in Mario is a core mechanic, but it's not alone. Without the floor to land on, it would be a very different game. To look at the same game, the friction, or how fast you speed up or slow down when you're in contact with the floor, is a mechanic. Almost anything in a game can be considered a mechanic. It is a very blurry line, though I will maintain that without any in-game effect, renaming your city isn't really a mechanic. When I think about mechanics, I break them down into a couple of broad categories, pure and representative. What I would call a pure mechanic is one that's only intended to serve and extend the gameplay. Tetris's rotating blocks, a Rubik's Cube's rotating blocks, or having multiple sets of dots on the blocks in dominoes. In some games, things like respawning is just added without any sort of justification, and that could be considered a pure mechanic as well. Representative mechanics would be mechanics used to represent a real thing in-game. It can be something simulationist, like guns doing damage or water restoring stamina, or fantastic, like spells doing damage or potions restoring mana. Of course, it does not need to be so concrete or direct. To represent drunkenness in a game, it could reduce your stats or blur your screen. Or to represent communications in a strategy game, you could have a fog of war where you have no units, or just not show you what units outside of your radio range or something. See. The line here is blurry as well. When there isn't enough information in a situation, humans tend to fill in the blanks. This makes 100% pure mechanics fairly rare. For example, if I showed you a puzzle to find a path through a jumble of lines, most would automatically start thinking of the lines as walls and see it as a maze. A lot of older games relied on the fact that people did this, using cabinet or box art to help prime the imagination. Even just naming something Pong would help insert the idea of ping pong. There are a lot of little tricks like that. Hopefully I'll make a few episodes on it in the future. Now, I've used the word metaphor a few times in my previous episodes. I didn't really use the word as it was defined in the dictionary, and honestly I just ad-libbed a good portion of those. I meant it in context to mean things that are represented in a game by mechanics. As representatives in Congress represent their constituents, mechanics in-game would represent their metaphor. Odd? Yeah. I came up with it on the fly, and if I come up with a better word in the future, I'll use that. It wouldn't be the first time a word got a new, wrong definition. I'm looking at you, Decimate. Some examples would be a crossbow in-game representing a real crossbow, or the reloading minigame representing the metaphor of dynamic battle conditions. Well, that's just a quick rundown of my show. Of course, it could change, it's my show, and if I really want to talk about something tangentially related, I will. Maybe music or something. So wherever this show goes, I hope you enjoy it. I'm not sure what I'll cover next week, maybe the dynamics of something simple, like tag. Whatever it is, I'm Kale the Quick, thanks for watching, and don't die. Until you've seen my next episode.